A poor man was married to a beautiful woman. They loved each other deeply and never argued. Their life was simple but full of happiness. However, they had a rich and handsome neighbor. One day, the rich man saw the poor man's wife and thought, "She is so beautiful. I want to marry her." Every day, while the poor man worked in the fields, the rich man visited the wife. He smiled and said, "You are beautiful, but your clothes are old. Why doesn't your husband buy you new pretty clothes? If he really loved you, he would." The wife shook her head. "My husband loves me," she said. But the rich man returned every day, repeating the same words. Slowly, doubt grew in her heart. "Maybe he is right," she thought. "Why hasn't my husband bought me new clothes? Maybe he doesn't love me enough." That evening, she looked at her husband and said, "Look at me. My clothes are old and ugly. I want new ones. Buy me some." Her husband smiled gently. "You don't need new clothes. To me, you are the most beautiful woman in the world." But the wife frowned. "If you love me, buy me a new dress," she insisted. The husband's heart ached. "I don't have much money," he thought. "I need to buy a new plow for work. But I want to make my wife happy." The next day, he went to the market and bought a new dress for her. When he brought it home, she put it on and twirled with joy. "Thank you, my dear husband," she said, tears in her eyes. "Now I know you truly love me." In that moment, the husband smiled because he realized that love was not in the dress but in the sacrifices made for each other. The next time the rich man visited, the poor man's wife greeted him in her new dress. She smiled proudly. "See? My husband loves me. He bought me this beautiful dress." But the rich man shook his head. "A good husband doesn't stop at dresses," he said. "He gives his wife gold. Where is your gold necklace? Where are your rings? Why hasn't your husband given you those?" He opened a box revealing beautiful gold jewelry that sparkled in the sunlight. "Look at these," he whispered. "Divorce your husband and marry me. I will give you all of this." The woman's heart did not waver. "Go away," she said firmly. "I love my husband, and he loves me. We are happy." But the rich man returned every day, holding the box in front of her eyes. Slowly, his words crept into her thoughts. "Maybe he's right," she wondered. "Why hasn't my husband bought me gold? Maybe he doesn't love me enough." That evening, she didn't light the fire or cook dinner. Her husband came home late after a long day in the fields. He was exhausted and hungry. "There's no dinner for you tonight," his wife said coldly. "You don't love me." The husband was shocked. "What?" he cried. "But my darling, I love you more than anything. You are the most wonderful person in the world to me." "Then why don't you buy me gold jewelry?" she asked. If a man loves his wife, he gives her gold a necklace, rings for her fingers. The husband's heart sank. "I spend all my money on her new dress," he thought. "How can I afford gold now?" But he couldn't bear to see her unhappy. "I'll go to my brother," he decided. "Maybe he will lend me the money." The next day, the husband walked to his brother's house. "Lend me some money, brother," he pleaded. "I will work in your fields to repay you." His brother nodded. "All right," he said, "but you must work hard." And so, the poor man agreed because, to him, nothing mattered more than his wife's happiness, even if it meant sacrificing his own comfort. The husband's brother said, "There are many stones in my field. You must remove them all." The poor man nodded and accepted the deal. With the money his brother lent him, he went to the market and bought gold jewelry. When he returned home, he gently placed the necklace around his wife's neck and the rings on her fingers. His wife's face lit up with joy. "Look at me," she said, twirling. "Aren't I beautiful?" Her husband smiled. "You are very beautiful. If you are happy, I am happy. She hugged him tightly. Thank you, my dear husband. Now I know you truly love me. The next morning, before the sun rose, the husband left the house quietly. He hurried to his brother's field, which was covered with stones. I must work hard, he thought. I must start early and finish late to repay my brother. At home, his wife felt cheerful. I'll make a delicious dinner for my husband tonight, she thought. He gives me wonderful gifts and works so hard for me. I know he loves me. As she prepared the meal, a familiar voice called out from outside. Are you there? The woman stepped outside. It was the rich neighbor. Ah, it's you, she said coldly. Listen, neighbor. You were wrong about my husband. Yesterday, he bought me this beautiful jewelry. He loves me, and I love him. I will not divorce him. I will not marry you. The rich man's face darkened with worry. Her husband loves her too much, he thought. If I want her, I must be clever. After a moment, he smiled slightly and said, Your husband gave you clothes and jewelry, but I can give you more than that. The woman frowned. What do you mean? She asked. Can your husband perform miracles? The rich man said softly. Miracles? No, of course not, the woman replied, shaking her head. Only God can perform miracles. Men cannot. But I can, the rich man said with confidence. Because I love you. The woman crossed her arms. Make a miracle for me now, she said. I can't, the rich man replied. You must promise to love me first. Leave your husband and come to me. Then I will show you wonderful miracles. The woman stayed silent, and the rich man left. That night, the poor man came home late. He was exhausted and hungry. His wife brought him water, and he washed his face and hands. She served him a warm, delicious meal. As he ate, she watched him closely. My poor husband, she thought. He works so hard for me. He comes home tired and hungry. The rich man is foolish. How could my husband ever make miracles? It's impossible. But the next day, and the day after that, the rich man returned to her house. Did your husband perform a miracle for you yet? He asked. Leave him and love me. I will make many, many miracles for you. At first, the woman ignored him. But over time, his words lingered in her mind. One evening, when her husband returned from work, he found her sitting quietly, looking sad. My dear wife, he said gently, what's wrong? Are you feeling ill? No, she replied softly. I'm sad because you don't love me. The husband's eyes widened in shock. What? But you know I love you. I bought you new clothes. I bought you gold jewelry. You are the most precious thing in the world to me. She lowered her gaze. But you don't make miracles for me. Her husband sat in silence, confused and hurt. Miracles? Of course, I can't make miracles, he said. Why would you want one? Who told you such a thing? The woman hesitated, then said, Our neighbor came by today. He told me that love makes miracles. If a man loves a woman, he will make miracles for her. The poor man's heart sank. That wicked man, he thought. He's trying to steal my wife.